Hello there, friends and enemies. My name is Toxy, and if you've been alive any time between 1995 and now, you've definitely most likely heard about Pokemon. Being one of the biggest franchises in the world, it is no surprise that Pokemon has a card game. In fact, the Pokemon card game is considered one of the big three, one of the biggest card games in the world, up there with Yu-Gi-Oh! And Magic. I have said in previous videos that I do not play Pokemon, and as of earlier this year, 2023, that has changed. I finally learned how to play to teach someone else that wanted to play, and I found it to be a really fun game. And while I haven't gotten to play the game too much, it has been consistently fun every single time I've played it. And it feels really nice to have a game that's kind of like Magic, but also just takes mechanics straight out of the Pokemon video games and puts them into a card game. That being said, I don't really have much more I can do to introduce Pokemon, so let's talk about the cards. In the Pokemon trading card game, you're going to be running a deck of 60 cards comprised of Pokemon from the 11 different types that there are in the card game, and made up primarily of 3 different types of cards. You have your Pokemon cards, your trainer cards, and your energy cards. Energy cards kind of act like this game's lands. These cards produce the energy needed for Pokemon to be able to pull off their attacks, or to pay for costs for things such as retreat. Trainer cards come in many different subtypes, but all of them are trainer cards. They act as supplemental spell type cards for your Pokemon, and usually depending on what type of trainer card you have, the bottom right hand corner of the card will have a little note that kind of tells you what that type of trainer card does or how it works. Last and most importantly, you have your Pokemon cards, the cards that are going to be your driving force in this game. The upper left-hand corner of Pokemon cards has a little indicator that tells you what type of Pokemon you're dealing with, whether it's a basic type or whether it's an evolved form from a basic type. The upper right-hand corner tells you the type of the card as well as how much health that Pokemon has. And the very bottom of the card, right under the text box, has 3 distinct boxes that tell you the Pokemon's weakness, resistances, and retreat cost. Its weaknesses are going to be the types that deal more damage to it. Its resistances are going to be the type that it's going to be dealt less damage by if it gets attacked. And its retreat cost is the cost that you can pay in order to bring that Pokemon out of active and replace it with a different Pokemon in your bench. Now that all might sound a little bit confusing, but luckily for you, we're gonna go over it in just a minute as we explore the gameplay. Here we have the Pokemon field, and we're going to start our game by shuffling our deck, setting it up, and drawing the top 7 cards of our deck. We're going to take a look at our hand and see if we have any basic Pokemon, which we're going to want for our starting hand, and we're going to take one of them and place them in our active zone face down. We can also take any number up to 5 of other basic type Pokemon in our hand and place them into our bench face down. We then take the top 6 cards of our deck and put them into our prize card zone, and we're ready to start the game. To start the game, each player flips over their active and benched Pokemon to reveal them, and we get ready to start our first turn. Start the turn by drawing the top card of your deck into your hand. Next, there's a few different things that we can do on our turn. If we have any other basic Pokemon in our hand, we can go ahead and place as many of them as we want into our bench, equaling up to the 5 spots that we have. We can also choose to evolve any of the Pokemon on our field if we have them. So we're going to evolve our Drifloon into a Drifblim. In order to evolve, a Pokemon must have been on the field at the start of the turn and must have not evolved this turn already, meaning you can only evolve a Pokemon once per turn. A Pokemon must also evolve from its previous form. Drifloon is a basic form, so it would evolve into a Stage 1. Any Stage 2 evolution would require a Stage 1 to already be on the field, meaning that a Pokemon must have evolved already. Neither player can evolve a Pokemon on their first turn of the game, so we'll take Drifblim back into our hand. It's also important to note that any damage or energy that a Pokemon has carries over when it evolves, but any status conditions that a Pokemon might have end the moment that it evolves. We can also choose to take any energy from our hand and attach them to a Pokemon, but we can only do this once per turn. I'm going to take this psychic energy and attach it to my Greavard. This energy is going to help us with attacking with our Pokemon as well as possibly paying any retreat costs that our Pokemon might have. We can also choose to play trainer cards on our turn. In order to play these, we will just set them on the field and declare that we are playing them, following with playing out their effects. You can play as many trainer cards as you want per turn, but if you're playing a supporter card like our Nemona here, one supporter card can only be played per turn. And if you're going first, you cannot play this card on the first turn of the game. So we'll take Nemona back. We can also choose to retreat our active Pokemon on our turn. If we wanted to retreat Greavard, we would take 2 energy from behind it and discard it into our pile, and then put Greavard back onto the bench, then replacing him with another Pokemon from our bench, making our Drifloon our new active Pokemon. It's important to note that certain status conditions will not allow you to retreat a Pokemon, such as being asleep or being paralyzed. Whenever a Pokemon is retreated to the bench, they keep all damage that they've taken, and any other attachments that were on them are kept on them when they're on the bench. You can only retreat 1 time per turn, and you can attack with your new active Pokemon. We can also choose to activate any abilities that our Pokemon may have. For example, let's look at Mimikyu. Mimikyu has the ability Heal Jamming, meaning that during this part of our turn, we could activate Heal Jamming and make sure our opponent cannot heal their benched Pokemon. You can use as many abilities as you want per turn. Now that we've done everything we can for the turn, we're ready to enter our attack phase. During the attack phase, our active Pokemon will be attacking our opponent's active Pokemon using any attack that we have the energy for on their card. There are a few things we need to do when attacking. The first is we need to make sure that we have the proper energy to attack with our Pokemon. Our Greavard's Graveyard Gambling requires 1 psychic energy, which it has attached to it, so we are good to go. Then, we take a look at our opponent's Pokemon's weaknesses and resistances. If our opponent's Pokemon says that it is weak to our type times 2, that means it'll take double the damage that it normally would from any of our attacks. However, if it says resist that type minus a certain number, that means that that much damage is reduced from the damage that it would have taken. We then dole out any damage counters to our opponent's Pokemon, and we move on from the turn. There are a few status conditions that can happen during attack, so we'll go over them right now. If our Pokemon is put to sleep, we're going to turn them to the left to indicate that they are asleep. When asleep, our Pokemon cannot attack or retreat, and during our Pokemon checkup, which we'll talk about in a little bit, we're going to flip a coin. If we flip heads, our Pokemon recovers and we can put it right side up, but if we flip tails, our Pokemon stays asleep. If our Pokemon gets burned, we put a burn marker on it.
It burns!
Then, during our Pokemon checkup, our Pokemon will take 2 damage counters for its burn Pokemon. We then get to flip a coin, and if it's heads, our Pokemon recovers from its burn. If our Pokemon is confused, we're going to go ahead and turn it towards us. A confused Pokemon can attack, but we're going to need to flip a coin before we attack each turn. If our coin flip is heads, the attack works and goes through normally. However, if our coin flip is tails, the attack not only doesn't happen, but our Pokemon takes 3 damage counters to itself. If our Pokemon is paralyzed, we go ahead and turn it to the right, and much like being asleep, it cannot attack and it cannot retreat. After our next turn of Greavard being paralyzed, it would go ahead and recover. And finally, if our Pokemon is poisoned, we can put a poison counter on it. And during each of our Pokemon checkup moments, we would put a single damage counter on it for being poisoned. If we knock out our opponent's Pokemon, we get to take one of our prize cards and put it into our hand. However, if our Pokemon is the one that gets knocked out, we're going to take our Pokemon and every card attached to it and put that into the discard pile. It's important to note that you cannot attack if you are the player going first in the game. After we attack, our turn is over and we pass our turn, and in between that period we enter our Pokemon checkup stage, where we either end status conditions, or we activate the effects of status conditions, or any effects that activate during Pokemon checkup. You win the game if you draw your last prize card, or if your opponent's active Pokemon gets knocked out and they have no Pokemon in their bench to replace it. And there you have Pokemon. As a big fan of Pokemon since I was a child, it's kind of a really big comfort game for me. I like Pokemon and I like Pokemon clone games, and so being able to play the Pokemon card game for the first time in 2023 really gave me that good feel that I get from playing Pokemon RPG video games. For the longest time, I fell into the trap that I feel like most people that come across the Pokemon card game do, where you just collect the cards because you like Pokemon, but you don't play because you find the rules to be confusing. They seem confusing at a first glance. And now finally having learned the game and been able to play it and seeing that the rules aren't really as confusing as they seem on paper, it makes me personally feel like when I was younger and I was looking at these rules, I was just really easily misinterpreting them for one reason or another. But the game is fun and I do encourage other people to try and play it. Price-wise, I believe we are all aware that Pokemon can get pretty expensive, but to get a starter deck actually isn't that bad. Decks vary in prices, but getting just a simple battle deck can net you about $11 to $12, which I personally don't feel is that bad of a cost for a 60 card deck. Other pre-constructed decks that are a little more premium, I guess, would net you a little bit more money if you wanted to buy them, but so far I haven't seen personally anything that's been too crazy egregious. And I do believe that there is an online simulator called Pokemon TCG Online. I will go ahead and link down in the description any online simulators that I find, but I do believe that that is a free online simulator if you'd like to try playing Pokemon. All that being said and wrapped up together in a nice little package, I think that I'll go ahead and give Pokemon a 7.5 out of 10. I really enjoy the Pokemon card game. I can see some people maybe getting frustrated with it. I could see this game getting a little bit broken, but it is fun and I do definitely recommend that people go out there and try and play the game. I think it's fun. That's all I have for today. Thank you so much for watching. If you play the Pokemon TCG, let me know your thoughts on my analysis of the game in this video down below. And if you like it, if you're interested in it, anything like that, let me know down below. I hope you found something enjoyable about this video. Thank you so much for watching once again, and until next time, as always, drink your water.